It is. No. I don't even know.
Brilliant.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah, brilliant. Bob.
It started with B.
It did start with B.
It started with B.
You expected, I don't even remember mine, let alone anybody else's.
Hey, a lot of times when I do this exercise, I start with myself, and then if Steve had to be next, he had to say mine, then his. Then when we went to the third person, they had to say mine, Steve, theirs. So by the time they get to the end,
Oh, gosh.
but it's a good brain exercise, because if you, when I went to school, we learned poetry. It was exercising the brain. And we don't do that much anymore because of cell phones. Just think of all the numbers that you remember, like your phone number when you were growing up. It was brought up last night, and people were saying, "This was my phone number growing up."
Yep.
They remember that, or my social security number. They know that, but we don't do that anymore.
I think it's
We
something to do
don't
with short-term
exercise
memory.
that memory brain of
I
people.
agree.
We don't, and that, we're kind of missing out, because saying poetry, I remember poetry, and that unbelievable. And kids nowadays want to say the Gettysburg Address, or even say the preamble to the Constitution. How many memorized the preamble to the Constitution? Fifth grade.
But I don't remember.
I just remember the first phrase.
Yeah, but
And the
we
Gettysburg.
do remember some of that stuff. And this is kind of an exercise, you give those adjectives, then the next day you come back and you ask. So we have kind of a busy schedule this morning. We're going to try to, I'm going to be a taskmaster. We're going to stay on task. We got Craig, got 7-8 hour drive. Betsy and Danielle, I have a 2.5 hour drive, so.
Wayne's got, what, 5 hours, 6
Yeah,
hours?
Wayne's got to go over, and he said,
Depends on the canyon.
there's some,
Yeah.
depends on the canyon, because he said coming over was like a mess. He had to go other routes, so.
But he's also going the wrong way. You're going with all the holiday, the weekend traffic heading up to the
You
mountain.
just never know.
Yeah.
So next up, if you're on the floor, you have 20 minutes. So we're going to start with Steve about the treasurer, then Dave, secretary, what they're talking about, and then Sally, Steve, back to Steve, and that.
I yield to the gentleman from Fraser.
So, I sort of got to wait for Dave to get his computer running.
But good morning,
So-
I'm glad you made it.
Careful that one step.
Yeah, it's a piece of tape on the floor.
Steve?
Almost.
Okay. All
This is
right.
one that Steve gave to me, looked like it just an updated one.
So what I wanted to just, yesterday was we discussed the survey that we did at all the conventions, and then following the conventions that we missed, Steve developed one that we could send out to people, and people that completed the survey, we then awarded their club. We selected one at random, and we awarded the club $150 for their local eyesight program. So, our survey encompasses people that go to conventions. Okay, so that tells you right away what type of people they are. They're old lions, should know a lot. They've been to every convention and blah, blah, blah. And then we just sent out the survey, and the district, I think Steve said you sent it to district governors.
No, actually, I sent it to every club president and secretary.
Okay,
And Southeast Central.
okay, Southeast and Central. So the people that responded, have some interest in lions. All right, so that's the survey we did. And here's the results. I graded all the surveys. You got there were 23 correct selections, and this was the grouping of the people. We had about a quarter of the people got A's. And then you can see what happened after that. But if you take the Cs and above, that's about 31% of the people. Not bad. But think about the group we're talking about. These are people that go to conventions, so they're probably longtime Lions. People in clubs that are somewhat interested in making an effort. And this was an open book test. They were told all the answers were on our website. And they were. I mean, the question came right off our website information. So yesterday when we ended up and we talked about how difficult it is for a district governor to recruit a new trustee, when 70% of the people he's talking to don't have any idea of what we do, what the Institute does or what the foundation does. So it makes it hard. And that's among the people, a target group that he might be interested in talking to. In fact, one recent district governor I talked to said, yeah, when he was asked to join another entity as a trustee, he had no idea what they did. None. He just took the job and he's glad, he said, I'm glad they had an orientation. But, so I did. Now, if I got one more slide there, Dave. Yeah. So at one of the conventions, at one of the conventions, we didn't tell the people where the answers were. We just gave them the survey and said, hand the survey in. So we call that a closed book. That was the closed book exam. At the next time, because the results were so dismal, at the next convention and on the survey that we mailed out, we told everybody where the answers were.
Really emphasized it.
And emphasized it. And same results, folks.
I know.
Same results. Okay? So that tells you that they don't even have a lot of interest in going to get the answers when we tell them where they are. So not only don't they know anything, they're not even motivated. So that's our job as you start to work on your plan in your districts with your district leadership team, is how do we raise this awareness, enthusiasm, knowledge higher? So I just wanted to thank you for sharing your time. I hope our taskmaster allows you a few extra minutes.
You have some time, Steve.
Okay. All right. Well, my job this morning, I have several jobs here. I'm supposed to talk about bylaws, board structure, and committee responsibilities. And some of those things have really been done already. But before I get started with that, I want to tell you about where you can always find our bylaws when you think, what's the rule on that? Because I know you're always going to be very concerned that you do things in accordance with our bylaws. They are on the website. I should say on our Google Workspace. And one of the folders is clearly identified as bylaws and articles of incorporation. And just if you're trying to understand what the structure is, we have an articles of incorporation which gives a very brief overview of what we do. And then the bylaws flesh it out in much more detail. Articles of incorporation date to 1991, I guess, or something about that. The exact date doesn't matter. But they're worth reading for just a quick overview. It is also what the IRS approved when we became a 501c3. If we were to change those, I believe we would have to send in the revised articles and request recertification as a 501c3. We also sent in our bylaws at the time, but we have amended them since then. But you have to be conscious of the fact that when you amend your bylaws, you don't do it in ways that might violate rules related to 501c3s. So the most recent revision of our bylaws was in September. There was one several years before that, and the most recent version is online as well as the prior version, the immediate prior version. The most significant thing that we did with the recent one was that we went over the duties of the committee. You got the updated information on that yesterday, and that committee information is now in kind of a numerical form, so I think it makes it fairly easy to see what the committee is doing. And You know, as you're going through the year, or if you're on a committee, I hope you will look at that fairly regularly to see what you should be doing. And if you perform all those tasks, I think you'll be in pretty good shape.
Steve,
So, yes.
just to sort of I want to tell you how I think about the Google Workspace. So on our website, it's like where you work. And you go to our website, and then if you log in other words, if you put your key in the door to the office, it'll open up the entire, you know, where that lady sits and she's been filing all those things in all those file drawers all these years. That's where all the files are. And all the folders are labeled in there. So the Google Workspace is nothing more than a little file system where we keep everything that goes on. And the way you get to it is you go to the website and you log in. That's your secret password into where the file room is.
Yeah, I'm supposed to talk about the Google Drive a little bit,
Yeah.
but it almost makes sense to talk about it now. And
Sure, it does.
so Dave is going to the website now, and there is a page on our website. And by the way, I'm trying to make our website relevant for you as for other people. And I know the Communications Committee is in charge of that, but believe me, I would be happy to turn over any management duties of the website to that committee. So anyway, we're not there yet, but if you go to the login page there are two links on the login page. One is to email, which you probably don't have to do, not if you set up email forwarding. And the other is to the Google Google Drive, which has two components to it. One is your own personal Google Drive, which you probably don't have any reason to use. I use it a lot for treasurer business because I don't want people poking around in me. Well, I want people overseeing me, but not to the point of logging into the bank account and things like that. So yes, so we're at the website right now. If you could click on that menu, that's the menu icon right there. And at the bottom of it, there is something that says login. You should be able to scroll down with your arrow keys, I think. Can you expand that and make it full screen? Or do you actually?
Oh, I just need to make it smaller.
You make the font smaller. Yeah, you're. Okay, keep going down. There we go. So there's login on the left. So you see that, well, it's kind of disappeared at this point. It says RMLEIF menu, but it's in the upper left. And it kind of looks like a hamburger with 3 slices or something like that, 2 pieces of bread and a hamburger in the middle. And so that's, don't worry about it if that's not good. So click on login, and then there are 2 links right there. And the first one, RMLEIF Trustee and Officer Mail. Probably you don't need to do that if you set up email forwarding. And I will say a few words about that. I will help anybody set it up who doesn't have it working. And then the one we want right now is Trustee and Officer Documents. And that will take you to your Google Drive, but it requires an intermediate step, which is a login at that point. And the reason to go to it through this means is that it'll get you to the right place. I mean, you can directly enter if you want to. You can just type into the address bar. You can type in drive.rmleif.org. Okay, drive.rmleif.org, and it'll do the same thing to you. But if you can't remember that, this will get you in. So once you're in, there are 2 components to it. And the first is My Drive, and the second is Shared Drive. If for some reason you don't see Shared Drive, tell me, send me an email, because I did have to configure it so that you would have access to the shared drive. And I failed to do that with somebody. I can't remember who it was. And they couldn't see it. And I thought, what's that? Oh, yeah. And so I have to give you access to that. But if you could expand, why don't you expand the shared drive by clicking that little triangle thing to the left of the shared drive. Shared with me is not what we're looking for so much as the shared drives. So click up from it, Dave, where it says shared drives, and go to the left to that little triangle pointing to the right. And those are the RMLEIF shared drive that you have access to. People who are on the finance committee should have access to another drive called the finance drive. And again, it's not that I'm trying to be secretive. It's just when it comes to account numbers and things like that, I'm trying to kind of keep those out of general circulation. And in any case, what you're looking at here is something that can be presented in either of two ways. If you click up on the right below the word RMLEIF, you'll see an image there which shows two different ways you can present it. One is just a list, which Dave has switched to, and the other is where they show you them arranged, you know, across the page here. More convenient for some things like photos and like that. Anyway, so I uploaded the photos this morning. I don't necessarily want to look at them now. But if you would look at bylaws, Dave, if you want to click on bylaws and legal, that's what I'm talking about right there. And so those are items that John sent me that I've filed separately, but mostly I've also put elsewhere. Articles of incorporation, if you want to just read our summary documents right there, that's it. I mean, that's what the IRS approved, and that's what we should be doing. So why don't you click into Articles of Incorporation and just click into it. It's it'll expand when you click on it. You might have to double click, I'm not sure. And so there's our original articles and our amended and restated articles. Why don't you click on the blue version of it? What I did is I did a optical character recognition of it, and I created one that you could edit it, but more I did it so you could highlight it and things like that. And so right there, it's showing that actually this is in an edit mode where Dave has edit access, not edit, but comment access to it, and he could add comments to it or something like that. So, you know, that's not working so well right now. Dave, why don't we go back and do the PDF version? So why don't you just click that left arrow and go out of it, well, close the outline right there. Actually, that will work, okay. But anyway, those are articles of incorporation, but the same thing is true for our bylaws. That's an automatic outlining feature, which I find doesn't work that well. That's a work in progress from Google. So I don't generally find it very useful. I just close them when I see something like that. And so, Dave, let's see. Why don't you go? Trying to think of how to go back to the view that we had. Yes, exactly that. Why don't you go to the bylaws, which would be down at the bottom of the page, towards the page. No, you're in the bylaws folder right now. Actually, yeah, no, you're not. You're in Articles of Incorporation. So you're right. You need to go to the root folder that says bylaws and legal. Just click on that. Just on that one. So click a little bit to the right so we're seeing that. Because what you can see is up above it says RMLEIF shared drive, bylaws and legal with a chevron or whatever you call it, and then items from John Harper. That's some stuff John sent me months ago that I put up. And then you just click on there and you can move up to the higher level folder or directory or whatever you want to call it. It's not hard to navigate around, but the key is that you've got not all, but many of the documents that are relevant here. So if you're trying to figure out what your committee should be doing, just put it right, just click on the bylaws, can you click on bylaws and legal? Click on the words right there, and then scroll down a little bit on the right-hand side, Dave. And right there, we've got, on the right-hand side, just scroll down with your mouse wheel, probably that'll do it. And you'll see the bylaws are down there. You know what you're doing? You must have the photos. Click on something on the right-hand pane. Yeah. So now go down with the arrows. So it looks tricky to navigate, but it's not. And case statement and bylaws right there is the document. Now that is revised. You can see the date on it. So if you want to figure out what your committee should be doing, go in there and look at committee responsibilities. We passed out a revised version of that yesterday, and now it'll tell you what your committee should be up to. Same thing. This is insisting apparently on giving us over on the left outline, which is a bit of a nuisance. There are also PDF versions of it where you won't get the outline and things like that. But so this is our main bylaws. They're available right there. And I probably shouldn't confess to this, but I haven't read every word of them yet. They're long, and there's a lot of stuff in there about details of elections and appointments and things like that. But certainly gradually learning all of them would be beneficial. And so I have focused very much on what our committees have to do. And I think if you focus on that, that will probably be the primary, you'll get your job done as a member of the board if you focus on the things that your committee should be doing. So kind of with one glow there, and the yellow in there, I should say, if anybody ever is inspired to do this, what I did is we have, it's two parts to the bylaws. One is a case statement, which is not uncommon for those to accompany bylaws, kind of giving a general reason why your entity exists and maybe summarizing it. And some of that stuff in the case statement needs to be revised. And so that's some information that somebody put in the case statement from, I don't know, 2015 or something, maybe earlier than that. And I highlighted it, I did not revise it. And there are other highlights, and I'm gonna probably incorporate them into the document. So those are things that I thought that needed to be ratified in the case statement. You can see them right there. In the bylaws themselves, there is a big highlight for when we get down to the committee duties, which are quite a few pages down. I would say that's at least page 25 or so to get down to the committee duties. Whenever you see all the yellow, so no, we've gone to, no, we're still in the case statement. So I've been meaning to update that. Now we're getting into it right now. So those are the actual bylaws right there. So this is what you saw yesterday with the handout that we gave for the revision. So it's always there. And I will say one thing more about logging in. Did you have a question about that?
No, I'm just telling you guys.
3 minutes, okay. I'll tell you something about logging in, especially if you have two Google accounts. It can get a little bit confusing because having two Google accounts, how many people do I have who use a Google account as their main alternative? Okay, have you had any trouble? Have you even tried this? I mean, okay, because you have to know a little bit about what you're doing in order
Whenever I
to.
try to log into this on my main account, it wants me to switch to the RMLEIF account.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just the way that Google works, if you're using Chrome, is that you'll have, if you have two logins simultaneously, you'll have one window with a title bar at the top that might be one color, and then you'll have another window with a different color bar at the top. And one will be all the stuff that you logged into your personal account on, and the other will be in your RMLEIF account. But if you don't have a personal Gmail account, it doesn't matter. I mean, you'll just be logged in whatever your browser might be. So I must be about out of time. I know I get different later shots at it because I still have 2 minutes.
Use your time there.
Okay. So anyway, board structure, we have 4 committees. One is the executive committee, and the other are your operating committees. And I'm going to talk later about the finance committee and sort of beg for another person to join us on the kind of finance committee that I think we probably need it. And so anyway, in terms of duties, like I said, go to the Rev Web. It's not that hard. I tried to simplify it as much as possible. I tried to create a landing page, one where I could just have you log in and then you could go to wherever you wanted by clicking on links, not creating it. I'm sorry, I just can't, I can't figure out how to do that. So what you need to do to get in is you just go to our webpage, click on the link, and then enter your login information, and then you will be in the Google Drive or your Gmail, your Google Mail for RMLEIF, which you really don't need. As long as you're forwarding, you really don't need it. Okay.
Log in.
Good job, Steve. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Dave, you are up to you, I think.
Okay, I forgot what I was supposed to talk about. Bylaws,
Business plan.
oh, let's see, no. the
Business plan.
Yeah, and I have a copy of the business plan, copy with some highlights in it. I'm gonna try to carry that. Okay. As I said yesterday, I confess that I've not studied the business plan carefully, but I did that. And here's what I came up with. There's two strategies. One of them is about achieving exceptional board of trustees governance through efficient organizational structure, training, skills, and development. The other one, is to obtain the funding required to fulfill the future institute support commitments and achieve exceptional foundation governance. So one is to be the best we can, and one is to raise the money it takes to do it. All right, and each one of these little goals, okay, duplicated some stuff. Sorry.
I think we have it in the binder.
Oh, well, the bylaws are, yeah, that's right.
At the,
Yeah, they're just, I knew I duplicated something, this is what it is, but I don't want to hand this out.
it's, I think the sixth, 6th tab is the business plan.
But in any case, you can only navigate on the screen. So underneath each one of the strategies are goals. And I've highlighted these goals based on, and I did the highlighting, it's not highlighted in your copy. But I highlighted the goals based on the committee that was assigned to do that. So goal number 1 of strategy 1 is for the executive committee. Let me just go ahead and hand this out. Steve, take one and hand it down, please. This is a Gantt chart that tells the timeline that we're supposed to be working on, and that's probably the last page of your bylaws, or of your business plan. And I did a little highlighting and so forth on this one to move that out. But the executive committee ones on the screen up here are highlighted in yellow. And then you'll see on the little Gantt chart that's coming around, there's a strategy and goal down the left-hand side.
I might point out that in your book, you have 2 Gantt charts. One was when we did the original plan, and then we backtracked a little bit as to what we assigned to committees.
And this, I believe, is the revised. So you see, goal 1, strategy 1, goal 2. Strategy 1, goal 2 is, let's see, strategy 1, goal 2 is on the program committee. So those are in blue on my chart up here. And so you see all the rest of the ones in strategy 1 are the responsibility of the program committee. And under strategy 2, goals 1 and 2 along the left-hand side of your Gantt chart are the communications committee's responsibility. Goal number 3 is yellow, so that's strategy 2. Goal 3 is the executive committee. And then as you go down the next page, there's goal 4 of strategy number 2. And that is also the executive committee. And then goal 5, the strategy 2 is the communications committee. Goal 6 is communications committee. Each one of those has a desired outcome and some ways to achieve those. I don't think we want to go into that detail here, but on your chart here that I show, let me see if I have, I think I put that up here too. I was going to be sideways. See if I can minimize it a little bit so we can see better. So what I did was, part of my task here, I think, is to talk about progress. The goal number one, strategy one, goal one, on your Gantt chart, you see was to have been completed by September of 2021. We revised the committee structure and that's been done. So I put a little red bar at the end to say, and a C over here to say completed. Okay, if you jump down to program committee, strategy one, goal two, their first one, it's also been completed. That's to develop a process to identify trustee and advisor candidates to assist the foundation to achieve its goals. We've developed a process. We've not implemented it yet, but we've developed the process, so that's completed. Program committee's also completed their second one, and they're 2 months ahead of schedule. Before the end of September 2022, develop trustee and advisor foundation orientation and government training program. Here we are. So that's been completed. So those three appear to have been completed, at least in my analysis. If you jump back up to the executive committee, before the end of March 2022, which is way past, improve public recognition of Lions by the University of Colorado and the Institute. I put an arrow to the right there because I don't think that's ever going to be completed. I think we're working on it. We've identified some things. We've talked to them about it, but I don't think we're there yet. John, am I correct?
Right.
And again, I don't know that we ever will be. I think
And it's
that's
not that there aren't activities happening around it, working with Rachel and so on that way, but it's just, I agree with him.
it's in progress, and I think we're making good progress in that regard. But that's why I put the arrow out there. And I did the same thing down on communications committee to identify full use potential of all LCIF grant opportunities. That's a changing thing. So it's not really ever going to be completed, but we said by March of this year that we should have a handle on that. And I can't speak to that, so I don't know. Go ahead.
On each of these goals, in the business plan itself are the desired outcomes that would mark the completion of this goal. We're not saying that we've achieved nirvana, but there are specific things. For example, the orientation and governance training program that we're in here today. It's on page 5. There were 7 desired outcomes. And one was to build educational activities into the board of trustee meetings and retreats. So this is the first one, sort of educational. And you go down there, those are what we had hoped would be the outcome of our plan. Are we going to achieve all of them? No. But instead of thinking about something that's going to go on forever,
Right.
You got to have a plan that says these are my outcomes. I can achieve these now. I can't achieve those, and we'll need to develop a new strategy to achieve those others. But to accomplish a business plan, you got to get what you can get. Don't think about it lasting forever.
Well, yeah, and I understand what you're saying. There's a point where we can say we did what we wanted to do, but we recognize that just like grant opportunities, it's a changing, the dynamic sort of a thing. So, so I stand corrected, but I also stand by my thinking. So as we go on down, you can see then that before the end of September, let's see, back in our executive committee, strategy 2, goal 4, before the end of September 22, identify institute financial needs that the foundation can assist with fulfilling. I think that's something that we've been working with to a great extent too. Is when Chairman Choi was here, we got some indications of some ideas that we might be able to help with. And I can't tell you what they are off the top of my head, but we talked with Dr. Mandava during that visit. He suggested some things that we might be involved with. So
Dr. Petrus did, and so did Dr. Cahook.
exactly. And so we're working on that. We are to have completed it until October or the end of September. So, but that's in progress. and as it should be. And then if you jump down to the program committee, their third task, strategy 1, goal 4. The plan was for them to start working on that in October, or October. And so I'm sure they're making plans to move forward with that. Going down to the communications committee, strategy 2, goal 2, the second one of their tasks, is in progress. Target groups among potential donors. We're to be identifying groups of people that are targets to develop a strategy to reach, to get them to consider donating to support the foundation. And that, and again, I don't know where they are, but the plan was that that's in progress. Then there's 2 others that are to begin later on: expand the number and variety of donor giving units, and develop a program that increases frequency of communicating foundation mission and achievements to the donor target group. Yesterday, John mentioned that we should be visiting this at each of our meetings. And I suggest that each of our committees, when they meet, should have this baby out in front of them and refer back in the business plan to see what you're trying to do. And I think this piece right here for the committees and the committee chairs is a key document. And by the way, you notice the blue line that I drew down there? That's where we are right now. That's July of 2022. So I think if our committees, led by the committee chairs, have this page out of your business plan in hand, and as you meet, look and see, what are we supposed to be in the middle of right now? Where are we? Go back to the details in the business plan as to what it is that we are trying to accomplish. How will we know when we've completed it? And there are steps there that have been suggested to achieve it. So it's my frustration as I look through this is to realize how little I have studied this, and I suspect I'm not alone. And I guess I'm here to echo what Bob has been beating us over the head with for months, is we need to, this needs to be underneath your pillow at night, and hopefully by osmosis, you know, but it needs to be something that is hung on your bulletin board or someplace where you can see it. Maybe it's in a corner of the screen of your computer, but and they tell me that if you really want to accomplish something, you should put sticky notes on your mirror. So when you shave and brush your teeth in the morning, you are reminded of it each day.
And you might slip and cut your throat.
Yeah. Don't let it get in the way of the shaving part of the mirror. Yeah.
On your sticky note, just put on there today's list.
Well, whatever, you know, but the point is that this should be ever in front of us and guiding us as we go along. And I think that, as I say, Bob's been trying to help us understand that. And I think that I finally come to that understanding myself. And I think that that's something that maybe that's what I'm here to tell you, is to point out.
This is very helpful, because when I read the business plan at this point, and I don't read it in depth either, I couldn't figure out what was belonged to what committee.
Right.
And you pulled all that out.
And it took a little studying to do that, and I'm happy that it's helpful for you too, because it was for me as well.
That's diligent Dave for you.
What's that?
Diligent Dave.
That's right, diligent Dave. And so anyway, I guess I lift this up to you as something to keep in the forefront of your planning as you plan your committee meetings. And I think it's incredibly important that we leave here with committee meeting dates planned. And each time we meet, we need, and maybe committee chairman need to send out a reminder 2 weeks before that and say, get out your business plan, folks. Look it over, see where we are, so when we get together, we can talk intelligently about it. Instead of getting to the meeting and going, let's try to figure this out. And you spend an hour trying to figure out where we're supposed to be. If we can utilize this as a guide, I think it will focus us, it will give us a track to run on. I know that was the intent, Bob, But I don't think, speaking for myself, I don't think I understood how important it was that this be our guide.
I have a question for Bob on the business plan. On page 9 of 9, there are sections, executive committee, board development committee, fundraising committee, and marketing committee. Now, we don't have any of those committees.
When we put, this is the original draft up of the business plan. And when we put the business plan together, we had an executive committee. We didn't really have a committee devoted to the development of the board. We sort of had fundraising, but we did have a marketing committee. But to think about what needed to be done, we looked at these 4 entities. We then, as a group, decided, let's take these responsibilities and assign them to our existing committees instead of redoing the bylaws and establishing 4 committees. So that's why these things were assigned to the executive committee. The board development committee responsibilities became the responsibilities of the program committee. The fundraising and marketing committee responsibilities were combined into the communications committee. And we then did a revision of the business plan to state that.
Okay.
And that's why you see now 3 committees here, because that was the decision of the board. And yesterday we passed out the revised bylaws, which stated the responsibilities of the committees. And we had also redone the business plan to indicate that at that time.
So is what's in the booklet here the original or the revised?
What you got in there is the original.
Okay, so the revised one, go to the website.
Is this what?
Now, that Gantt chart that I gave you is the revised Gantt chart and should give you the guide to run on. This is, I believe the one I have here is the revised one that we're looking at. So you need to probably go to the website and maybe print off a copy of the business plan there.
Got 2 minutes.
I get 2 minutes.
Yeah. I'm a taskmaster.
Can I suggest when we do these revisions that someplace we have a date on it? Because when I was looking to see what the committee did,
You were looking at the original.
yeah, all kinds of things. And I had no idea where they were in the grand scheme of things.
Okay, so, why don't I, as your secretary, when I get home, pull up the actual copy of the revised business plan and email it to all of you. Then you can go to the website yourself to find it, but I know that initially that's challenging sometimes, so call Steve if you need help with that, but just so that you be sure that you have the one in hand, I'll email it. Okay? Gary, I think I'm done. I don't know what you
Still got a minute. I mean, Dave, I know you. You got a minute, and I know you know how to use it.
Well, let me show you some,
Can I take,
please.
I would take 30 seconds of that?
Sure.
For the committees, when you're going to meet, always have an agenda. Do not waste our time with meetings where there is no agenda. As the committee chairman, spend time working and developing an agenda for the meeting that everybody is aware of so that we don't waste our time. There's nothing
Send it out
more,
in advance.
yes, there's nothing more frustrating than being on any activity where you call a meeting and you waste 45 minutes figuring out, as you said, what the hell are we doing here?
And if you look at our agenda we set, we do have time restraints because we are busy people.
That's a good idea.
So you set time restraints.
But
We don't have time to wait. We need to get business.
That's right.
But I would add to that, not only because I like the sound of my own voice, but because sometimes the task turns out to be bigger than, as the committee chairman, I think you need to have the discretion to say, I know we only planned 15 minutes for this, but we're rolling. Let's take 10 more.
That's right.
And judiciously, live with the timeline or expand it, but with that, I think is part of the committee chairman's responsibility as well. So,
Thanks, Dave.
my pleasure.
Sally, we are up to you.
Well, mine is going to be very quick.
Thank you.
Progress, the only progress that I am really aware of for the committee, other than what Dave has sort of indicated, is that in May, Ted wrote an article about Choi and his wife's visit here, and had written it up, and it will be in one of the newsletters that Rachel is sending out. It has not come out yet, but you might look for it.
Which Ted, or this Ted?
No,
Okay.
Wisconsin, or
Oh.
Wyoming kid.
Yeah,
Okay.
Wyoming Ted, previous chair of the communications committee. So we have not met or gotten together, and I welcome all the new members that are on my committee. And I believe, Dave, you're on our committee. There may be times when we want to do a Zoom. Are you a Zoom host?
I am indeed.
Can I say something about that? I don't want to cut into your time, but you
That's
said.
okay.
Okay. There is the issue of how are you going to meet remotely? And
What, I can't hear you.
there is the issue of how are you going to meet remotely? And some of us, I guess, have access to Zoom. There's free Zoom, I guess, which is limited to 45 minutes. There is also a Zoom-like feature that is available in our Google Workspace. The only limitation that I find on it is that it won't record. You have to pay extra for that. And we're not paying, our workspace is free. So if you're trying to figure out how can our committee meet, one possibility is to send an email to Steve and say, how can I do that with Google? I understand I can do it. Yeah, you can do it with Google, and it's not hard.
Well, then I would say also, all of us are at least I am very much more familiar with Zoom, having a link sent to me, as Dave did.
Mhm.
And it just seems to be,
The Wyoming Lions have a Zoom account, and it isn't billed out based on usage, as far as I understand. You pay a fee and you can use it as much as you like, so.
correct.
I have a Zoom also.
Yes, and so between the two of us, we ought to be able to set up a meeting, and it can even be set up to where the person who set up the meeting doesn't even have to be there. You can set it up so people can come in automatically, and the only problem is that you need to assign someone as a co-host
Host.
so that they can share the screen if they choose to.
Correct.
But I'm very happy to set those up for any of the committees. I do it for the Wyoming Lions and the groups when they meet. And I set it up and try to be free during that time, so if they have an issue, they can call me. But the Lions Wyoming Foundation has their meetings without me and has learned to be very self-sufficient that way.
Each of our committees has somebody that has a Zoom account or access to it. Betsy can do it for the
Yeah.
program committee, Dave's can do the executive committee, you can do the finance committee.
Well, I don't
However you
actually
want
have
to do it.
access to a Zoom account unless I use the
Well,
district one.
You still
The
can
state
get,
has a Zoom account.
And that's what I'm saying is,
Can I freely use that?
As far as I understand.
all you need is to log in and the password.
Contact Donna.
Because I've given that to other members of our committees to use the Wyoming account. They
you
just
get
log in
Dave on the
and finish
communications
their meeting.
committee, you got, everybody's got access, so.
I'm done, thank you, Lion Gary, for extension.
And I have a few things too.
And I am through too, so I give the remaining number of minutes to whomever.
Well, let me suggest that because why don't you put up our website?
Okay.
Because this is about our foundation, social media, to make sure that you're all aware of it.
As it's going up, the background on this is that we were managed by Corky Carlson. Our website was written in WordPress, and over the summer, or actually in the last month or two, I've taken over the management of the website. We are now hosted on Google, we're using our free Google Workspace for the hosting and for the web development tool. And it's not a hard tool to use. I would liken it to using Publisher or something like that, which is to say it's not like, oh, roll out of bed and instantly start using it. But it's not that hard to use either. It takes a little bit of skill, and that's easily developed. I developed the skills in the course of a few days or something like that just by doing it. And so the website at RMLEIF.org is what you're seeing right now. And one of the reasons I wanted to, there were several reasons to take it from Corky, but one of them was I thought that having Corky as a middleman was just making it too hard to revise the website. And Dave, if you would push on the left on the, click on the donors, that's exactly where it put. That was one of the primary things
This
I
one,
wanted
our
to do.
donors.
Yeah, just click on donors, our donors right there. So if you want to scroll down right there, that's the list of all our donors. So if you want to see which clubs have given in your district, you can look it up there. But the only way to update that was to send it to Corky and say, hey, could you add 2 more names? We got 2 more donations. And that was just getting that. I mean, it's just so much easier for me to just log on, add it. It's no harder than it is to add it to a spreadsheet list. And I can share access to it with anybody that'd like to. So to the communications committee, I hope you'll think about the opportunities that you have here. This is a somewhat stripped down version of the website that we had before. In particular, I streamlined the history a moderate amount. I still have a copy of the old website if anybody would like to see all the things that were there. Some of it's a little dated, like description of what we're going to do in Mission 2020 and things like that, which is now passed. But any part of this can be updated, and it's not terribly difficult. And I think the best way to do it would be cooperatively with you. I give you a copy of it, you work on it, and then once you're ready, you tell me about it, and then we'll put the stuff up. So, Todd, you want to say something?
Yeah. So, on the, let's go to the home page. So, and don't click anything else.
Okay.
Yeah, just leave it there. So this is our, this is about us. Okay. And there's lots of information here that you can use to make a presentation with at a club meeting. If they have any internet connection and a projector, you can, this is our story. This is the history right here. So you could use this. It also would be a portal for us to get to what the communications people here at the Institute whittle and Mandava's quarterly letter that I think you all received. And attached to that were, I think, 8 articles by Whittle that she had written. That can be linked into this. So Lions can get the latest news about what's going on to here instead of trying to go to the Department of Ophthalmology thing, okay? There can be a link to this from your district websites if your district has a website. So I just wanted to bring up that this is our social media. This is our social media. So now we need to be thinking about how do we make the best use of our social media to hit our target audience of donors, which are our Lions in Wyoming and Colorado.
May I ask about, Colorado has a website, Wyoming has a website. Are we linked to those? In other words,
Do they have a link on their website to bring us to ours? I don't
Right.
know. But we should.
I don't think Colorado is.
If you go to the state, the MD6 website, you will see a splash about all of the entities.
Right,
Okay.
Yeah.
And whether you can click on that and get to our website,
I'm not really
since
sure.
we brought up the new one, I don't know, but
We're at the same place. It's the one-
Okay. So that's what the communications committee should be thinking about.
Yeah.
How do we,
Yeah.
and I mean, we got a guy over here that can make it happen overnight. And it's go visit the MD6 website and click on it and see if the damn thing gets anybody here.
Did you get that, Steve?
I mean, every time we get a donation, I just log on and I just enter a new name on it. I regularly update it, so it's quite easy for me to do it. Just as easy as keeping a list in a spreadsheet, basically. I don't want to just say that instantly you're going to be able to use it, but the learning curve is not steep. So
I
if you would
use
scroll
the
down on
same
that.
tool to build a website for another organization I'm part of, and it's not brain surgery, you do get a headache, and it's not all encompassing, okay, but you can do interesting things.
Yeah, we couldn't create one of these flashy websites where things go bouncing around and zooming and all that kind of stuff. It's a basic web development tool, but it's good enough for us.
Yeah.
And I or you could learn how to use it. Dave, if you would go scroll down beneath the foundation story right there, there's actually one thing that I would like you to click on. See where it says Rocky Mountain Lime Institute on Google Earth? You'll see if we have enough power on your computer. Click on that. Yeah, and now watch. Not as fast as I was hoping.
It'll get there.
Last time I was on that site, I went and fixed breakfast and not mowed the grass. It was still going.
Pretty cool.
Wouldn't this be great to show at a club meeting?
That's exactly what I would say, yeah, or your presentation. Make sure you have a powerful enough computer. My computer must be a little bit more powerful, but that's an aerial view of the building that we're in right now, and we are orbiting around it.
May have something to do with the speed of the connection too.
Oh, yeah, that's quite possible. Yeah, I don't mean to blame it all on your computer and your laptop.
And what menu item is that under?
If you're on the home page, there's
Yeah.
that button, and it says on a computer shows an excellent aerial view.
Oh,
And I
right
should
there,
should
okay.
perhaps say on a computer with a reasonable connection, it shows an excellent view. So before you do that at a club meeting, you might want to just test it to see if it's going to go well or not. And
You know, I learned a long time ago that it's a really good idea to take your equipment to the location where you're going to be using it and test it in that location.
Yes.
I learned that the hard way when my boss wanted me to do a presentation from the school board in Laramie County, and it didn't go well. Okay, so
Related to that picture, it's just that, you know, what the history that I talked about is that you saw all of these buildings and you had to search to find which one of them was ours. That was all either open ground, building 400, or some wooden barracks. You know, most of it was just open territory when we moved into this building.
Is there a picture of that can go on the?
In the history pictures that he's got on there, I think he has some pictures of the building. I don't know if he has any pictures of when it was all just dirt.
I had knee surgery done at the Fitzsimmons Army Hospital. Building at the end of the street up here.
Oh, yeah,
That was the only building
I
out there.
know. I took my kid there for an emergency once.
Right here, this one.
When he hit a
That
bomb.
was the only building out here in the 60s.
That picture's out of date, still shows a parking lot across the
Yes.
street.
Used to be a lot of parking there.
I found out that a lot of Google Maps stuff is out of date. They just don't get around to taking a picture of every place in the world.
daily, yeah.
There's a story here that was mentioned, that was one of the stories from UC Health.
And
Right.
everybody
One of
knows,
Dr. Hansen's patients.
everybody knows to type in RMLEIF.org. You know, forget those I after E rules, RMLEIF.org, and then that'll take you there.
And you said if you type in. what was it?
If you want to go to the drive, you can try to type in drive.remleaf.org, and you'll get to all our documents. Or you can go here, and if you do that, then you'll be taken, to our webpage, either one of those. Does that mean it's my turn now, or what's the deal there?
It's your turn.
Okay. Well, I'm next supposed to talk about expense reimbursement and Google Drive. We've obviously been talking about that. Dave, it's at least a little bit your computer. I'm doing it on my computer right now, and it's going fairly.
Very well,
smoothly.
it's a pretty old computer.
Okay. So anyway, I'm watching it spin around right here. Okay, reimbursement. First thing is that you'll receive something in your email either this afternoon or tomorrow related to reimbursement if you're entitled to reimbursement, which means that I probably won't send it to people in Denver, but everybody else is coming from out of town. And so you'll receive a Google form, which I make up. They're not hard to make up, by the way. And it'll ask you for your mileage. So anyway, that's our basic form of reimbursement. If something doesn't fit into that model, just contact me directly because I'm in charge of the reimbursement. But anyway, the basic rules for reimbursement are that if you come to a meeting, generally speaking, we reserve and pay for the Hilton Garden Inn HGI room for you, so you don't have to worry about that. And we reimburse you at 30 cents per mile for mileage to get here. If you come by other means, we'll figure out how far it was and we'll reimburse you at the same rate. I know that 30 cents per mile in the world of $5 gas isn't very realistic. Maybe we should talk about something like that. But in any case, that's the basic reimbursement you're going to be looking at. The other type of reimbursement that you would be looking at would be if we have a convention. And this year was complex because we separated the trustees meeting from the member meeting being all the Lions in the state. And the general rule there is that when you go to a convention in which both of those happen together, which didn't occur this year, we have reimbursement for your room and we have reimbursement for your mileage to get there. And if you're going to what I call a foreign convention, that is not the one in your own state, we will also reimburse you for your registration. Now, things get a little bit complicated because often registrations nowadays include, do you want to eat a lunch? Do you want to have salmon? Right, and things like that. And so we'll try and unravel those and break it down into the component that is for room. And we, in general, won't give you compensation or reimbursement for meals and like that. If it's impossible to unravel it, we'll deal with it when that arises. But that's the basic rule that you'll get for room but not board.
I remember that I had to fly to Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how is that?
We'll go to Google and say, what would it cost, how many miles would it have been to drive? And
Just get the
multiply
mileage
it
of
by
what it
30.
is.
And so, yeah, if you have any questions like that, let me know. So anyway, that's the basics that you need to know about. Because we broke up the meeting of the members from the meeting of the board, and I should say, I use the term members frequently to refer to you, officers, trustees, and advisors, because that's a mouthful to say that. But I think more formally, the members are really all the Lions in the two states. But in this case, I am referring to the Lions in the two states. So anyway, when those are together, life's pretty simple because we have just a single meeting at which that occurs. What happened this year with the breakup into a meeting that we had separately right here, that was easy to figure out reimbursement for that. It's just normal. How do we deal with reimbursement? Well, we pay for the room and we give you mileage to get here. But then it came to what do we do with reimbursement for the convention? And that's where it got complicated because the question was, were you really there because of RMLEIF? And I mean, that's the kind of thing we're reimbursing for. And it became clear to me as the unfortunate person who becomes the decider on whether I'm going to send you money or not. I don't like being in that position. But I didn't know clear rules. I communicated some with John and like that. And one of the things I would like to do is with the finance committee, I would like to, first of all, identify whether there are any old rules that we have that I don't know about that might have addressed some of these situations. That might be very hard given the somewhat disorganized state of our documents. And if that's not the case, we try and create something which addresses it and which provides some guidance on what to do. I mean, things like, let's suppose you were there and there was a substantial component of supporting RMLEIF while you were at a meeting, and you also got some compensation from another source, but it didn't pay for your entire room, things like that. We, as far as I know, we don't have guidance on that. So I think it would be a good idea for the Finance Committee, possibly augmented by some people from other committees who, I mean, I always feel like, since I'm in Denver and I don't need to drive very far to get to meetings for the most part, that it's easy for me to be real harsh about reimbursement, and people might not think that that's so fair. So it would be good to have people other than me who are reflecting on things like that. But I also know what our budget is and things like that, and we don't have infinite resources. So that's one of the things that I have on the list for our committee to consider. Yeah.
My thought is, we don't need to get that bureaucracy. See, we have taken an oath, or whatever you want to call it, to be on this board, and we follow certain ethics. And I think that anybody in this room would know whether that was appropriate or not. And so,
I'm
we
not
don't
sure,
have
are
to
you
spell it out
suggesting
black
that
and white.
we let it be up to each individual to decide what they should request?
No, I think it is a discussion that they can have with you.
Mhm.
But I don't think anybody's going to try to, okay, I'm going to game this system and get a few more dollars.
Yeah.
I don't believe that for this group.
Well, if I could give the example of somebody who spent a lot of money getting the meeting, it was Ted Lincoln. I mean, he used to fly down, he'd stay 2 nights and like that, and he got compensated much less than it cost him to go here, I know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's what would happen.
So-
People are not going to take advantage of you, of us.
Mhm. So I mean, it just makes me, as the person who says, here's what we're gonna pay you, much more comfortable if I can point to some rules.
That's
Okay.
true, but it's
Mhm.
also the responsibility of this complete board to ensure that the fiscal management of the finance
Right,
is done.
right. And
So it doesn't fall completely on you.
Right, but I'm the one who, I will get the email and have to send a check to people, which, by the way, is one other aspect of it if you haven't had it yet. I get US Bank to send checks, and as you know, it takes a week from when I tell them to send a check till it arrives in your mail. And so just beware that there's a delay in the process. But anyway, it's just that I can't call the entire board when I get a request and decide what to do. So if I have guidance there on general rules that I can apply, it makes me much more comfortable saying, sorry, I don't think we can reimburse you here. And that's what I'm trying to avoid, that sense of discomfort on my part.
Have you had to say no to anyone?
I have, yes.
Oh, wow.
So anyway, and it happened, this was the first time that it happened. It may not happen again for a long time. But when we divide up the 2 meetings, then it becomes, why are you going to the member meeting as opposed to the board meeting? So that was the main issue that arose. And then what if you got more than one source? And yet that other source is not very generous, or you maxed out with that source or something like that because, your term, you're at the end of the year or something.
I pass the buck to the president.
Well, John and I have had some email back and forth about it
Okay.
like that. And I just feel like it would be nice to have some rules that were considered by people who are possibly going to be in this situation.
Maybe
So
not use the term rules, but policy.
Policy, yeah. Mhm. Which actually, yes, go ahead.
I used to say, so I see that as part of your committee is that, you present to what you think should be the rules to the board, they accept, and then we all live by it.
Yeah. And then I'll post them on the web. And I would probably put something like a link in the reimbursement form that you'll get in your email too. So anyway, so that's reimbursement, how it's going to work. I mean, everybody, well, not everybody, you have it. Does the Google form work okay for people? I mean,
Works great, works great.
all I ask you first.
I don't use Google much, so.
Well, no, you don't even have to log into Google. I mean, you'll get it in your email. I mean, you got one, right?
Yeah.
So just respond to it, and it automatically goes to my Google account, gets put into a spreadsheet, and then I know what the mileage was. I mean, that's generally what the reimbursement is. So anyway, the feedback I've gotten has been somewhat limited, but it seems to be working.
Works good, works very good.
The less feedback you get, the more likely.
That's right,
yeah.
And then we were already talking about Google Drive, and so I guess I've talked about that. I was thinking that if you're uncomfortable with Google Drive, one possibility would be to do maybe a session with several people in which I'm at one end and you just log in. I'll set up a Zoom call or something like that, and I could just say, okay, here, let's show you how you could get to X, because I think the vast majority of stuff you need to do this job is on Google Drive. And if we use Google Drive more than we're using it now, we could make it even easier. To give you an example of how that works, there's something called Google Groups. And so if you wanted to send an email to everybody right here in this room, you'd send an email right now to internal users at RMLEIF.org. Right? And that will automatically go to the email of everyone. And all you have to do is just address it. You don't have to have, I mean, I think John Case sent a list of all the users, or rather all the email addresses. So he sends that email, and he's so used to doing it, he doesn't realize how much work it is. So,
There's not any work at all. I click Remley, that addresses all
so
of
you've created something
Yeah.
like a group. This is a shared group. And so anyway, but the other thing about that is that anything that goes through internal users there's a permanent record of it that's kept on Google Drive. So if you can't find the email, you just, okay, what did John send me? I mean, you can look. I'm personally one of the world's best about not being able to find the email. To look at an email and then go look at some other email, and then I can't find the one I was looking at that was from, I don't know, March 15th or something like that. I don't know what my talent is, but it is an amazing skill not to be able to find old emails. But this, you have that same skill.
No, I wanted to just bring up a point about Google site or Google Drive. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So on the Google Drive, just a generic thing called the Google Drive. And you saw earlier it said My Drive and the Shared Drive. Okay. But on the Google Drive, they have a Google version of everything, PowerPoint to make slides. They have their version of Excel. They have their version of Word, whatever it is. And as you go to do presentations, if you don't have PowerPoint on your own laptop to build a presentation, you can build a presentation on your drive, my drive, Google Drive, using Google Sheets, and then download it, and you can download it into a PowerPoint app. And now you got a presentation you can put on a thumb drive and take to any meeting you'd like to take. So those of you, obviously the people, professional teachers are using all these tools already, but if you haven't been using these sorts of tools before, they're extremely simple. If you go to Google Sheets, Google Drive, I think it's called Google Slides, just Google Slides, and you can, and I use it all the time.
So do you go into when you're into your My Drive, then you go to the slides?
Yeah.
There's a little button up there that has 9 dots, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
Tic-tac-toe
7, 8,
board.
9. And you click on that, and then you can go down to the documents, and it's Google Docs for Word and spreadsheet and slides.
Yeah, because I have all that on my regular.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's all you have to
Yeah,
do.
if you already got it on your computer, some people just don't have that on their computer. They've just got, the inexpensive version of Word, they don't have. I guess it's called Windows Home, it only has a few of them. Anyway, I just wanted to bring up that there's some
Well,
very good tools there.
in fact, there is a golden Lions Club presentation in Google Slides that is on the website right now, which I was gonna plug in and just show you, because I just did this very thing. So can I just?
I just choose to get my briefcase on.
So in effort to give you a comfort zone as to where we're all at, is I wear as a badge of honor that I still use AOL.
I do too.
And when people ask me for my or for my address, and I tell them it's AOL, and I'm proud of it. It's like I'm proud of being 74. You know, it takes guts to live a long life in America. And so Steve has been dragging me kicking and screaming onto Google. And because he's moved so much of our stuff onto Google, he's forcing me to, learn more about Google and probably eventually, right now is that, I have Google addresses, but they're all set up so they're forwarded to my AOL account because I'm not going to go out and Google and look for them. But anyhow, it's just that if you're struggling, to get through there, don't feel like the Lone Ranger as such, but over a period of time where you start building a comfort zone with using Google and.
I'm a Microsoft person, so.
Google is very, very compatible with Microsoft.
It may be comparable or
Compatible.
compatible. I've heard that expression before, and it's not.
Anyway, if you would like, you can download, this is the presentation that I made to Golden Lions in December of last year. And so, this is just, I talked through this, there are some notes and like that that I have to talk about it. And this just was in the background as I did the presentation, and I thought things were pretty well received. So if you're looking for one, the Golden Lions, you can even find them on there, and I'm not sure exactly where they are. I pointed them out that they were donors originally and like that. And there it is, so I put it in directly. So these are just pictures that we had in all of these, I believe, are on the Google Drive if you would like to go looking through it. And so there's a ready-made presentation for you, and you say, okay, I would like this to be in PowerPoint. And so you click on the file menu right here, and which I'm having a hard time getting to, and it says download, and there gives you the option to download it in Microsoft PowerPoint. If you want it just to be in PDF, where you just go from page to page to page, you can also download it in that format too. So when I was saying it's compatible, I've had reasonable experience downloading things and having them come through. If you do something, the usual problem I encounter is if you create something in Word that uses a fancy capability of Word, this is not as powerful as Word is, and so something will be lost. If you go in the other direction, I don't have nearly as much problem because Google's word processor is just not nearly as fancy as the Microsoft processor. So that's when I say compatible, that's what I mean. You could just download this and you would now have a PowerPoint. It turned out that I had an internet connection and I knew I was going to have one. And it was promised that it would be reasonable at Google, and it turned out to be okay. After the fact, I thought, wow, I was kind of gambling because it might not have been as good as they were saying. I think I did make a PDF as a backup, just in case something went wrong. But anyway, so this is, there's just a heck of a lot of stuff on the Google Drive if you want to use it. And so.
Can you edit that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you just, if you put it back up again for a second. So on the left side are all the slides, okay? And up in the top left, very top though, it's hard to see it right now, but there's a thing that'll say new slide. You want to add a slide?
Uh-huh.
And then it'll ask you, well, what do you want it to look like? Because you can
It'll be
have,
under
they have
slide.
various themes.
Audio, well, this is components of it, link comments, new slide right down here.
So now that it came up,
Then you go.
and that's the theme he had chosen. So now you can paste anything you want, type anything you want.
Frequently, what I do is I just duplicate a slide, use it, particularly that text in it, and then I use that as my start.
That on Microsoft.
So,
Yeah, we're not saying you can't do this using all the Microsoft stuff, if you have that stuff. I'm just saying, if you don't have that, you don't need to go upgrade what you have. It's here and it's free.
So I just made another copy.
That's all.
Duplicate it, it's really easy to do. And like I said, if you can do it in Microsoft, that's fine, this would be a good starting point. Download this, load it into Microsoft PowerPoint, and then you'll have a pretty well fleshed out set of pictures that you can show if you do a presentation, and you can customize it as much as you want. So another thing that I wanted to show on our website is for communication. I took an article that was published on the CU website, on the UC Health website, and that's concerning this individual who you might have recognized from a picture that was shown yesterday. That is a magnifier that is right above her eyes, right there, by the way. She's a low vision individual who now has a restricted driving license that I believe can only be used during the day when it's light. And this was the article about her, and I linked to it.
We're doing good there.
And
So
so
3 minutes.
trying to create a little bit of interest here. And 3 more minutes is what I've got. Okay, is everybody thinking, my watch is not going fast enough here? But anyway, so for the people on communications, if you see interesting stuff, we can put some links on the front page. Now, another thing that we can do is there's something in Google Analytics. You want to know if anybody's going to the web page, we do have the ability to find out how many visitors we're getting. And I could never get that from Corky. We don't have a lot. You can see right there, we've got 6, 4, and these are daily visits, something like that. But if we keep up a steady stream of a small number of visitors, that, at least we know that we're getting, some people going there.
Yesterday we were 4, but that was most of those with us.
That probably was, yeah. No, that's true. I mean, and I'm also probably, I visit the website, so I get counted to some extent too. But people who are putting things on might be interested in figuring out, what are people looking at and things like that. And so one of the things you can look at is, I'm trying to find those visited pages. So I don't know why people from China are visiting us, probably trying to hack us, I guess. And there's the pages over on the right that we looked at. That's how many views that we got on various pages. So we can, find out, I'm surprised Contact Us has very many visits, but there were a lot of visits to our donors page right after the conventions. Because I think I have that list of donors at the back of the convention reports, and I think people were interested in seeing, who else gave, or maybe they want to see their own name, I'm not sure. So anyway, we have some ability to monitor things. There's also geographic information you can get about what states, but I don't know, you can figure out, are they coming in from Akron or something like that. So anyway, that's the stuff. So I think my time is pretty much up.
Thanks, Steve. You did great.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for making me feel good about it. You did good work, so.
You will be looking at that page tomorrow to see if there's a spike after you get home tonight.
There will be.
So Betsy, you are up.
Okay, by default, process of elimination, I was put in as program chair. As you can see, our work was developing the business plan. Bob was wonderful about setting that up and explaining that to us. And so we did the business plan over the last year or so. And our main goal is basically a long-range planning program. We figure out what we need to do, and we go about and doing that. But we also had a couple of other things that we are kind of in charge of, and that's kind of what our goal is. And one of them, there's 2 programs that we have with RMLEIF that you may or may not know. But one, we provide $75 for anybody that needs and requests an exam. And it doesn't necessarily have to be here, but if there's someplace like up in Wyoming, Cody, or down at Durango that really needs to go and see something, and the clubs can request that. They request it to any one of our members and say,
That's the travel money that's available.
that's
The
the other one.
$75 is
for
for
the-
Dr. Hanson in this building.
Oh, okay.
So it's just that,
It-
and not an actual eye exam, is that right?
Right, it's just a
It's
low
their-
Low
vision
vision
exam
screen.
Low
here.
vision exam.
And it's usually, the request usually comes from Dr. Hanson, I believe.
Oh, okay. See, that's where you can tell I didn't know. But the other one is the $500 travel expense. And that is requested and from the club, a club. And then $500 goes back to that club for travel for the family to get where they need to be.
And I'll add to that, you get that. It's very important that you can get that again, but you need to have them bring in the receipts to prove that they spent the $500 for travel and lodging. If they don't do that, they're not gonna get another $500. So it can be an ongoing,
Most clubs,
But
if
it's
they
through the
haven't
clubs.
used all of the $500, send the balance back. And the request will come to you as trustees, and then call Steve and say, so-and-so club needs $500, end the subject. We don't ask them. If they ask for it, we send them the money. But if they want a second $500, they gotta explain what they did with the first $500.
Steve will send the money to the club. So actually, the club's responsible to make sure.
Is it a good practice to just go ahead and send the receipts in at that time? After they've spent the money?
No, they bring the receipts to the club.
I understand, but you said we have to be sure to justify it to Steve how the money was spent before we can apply for another.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm suggesting that once I get the receipts from them, I'm at the club. I send them to Steve right at that point,
I think that's a good idea myself.
Yeah.
rather than wait till I
Yeah,
run into,
I
okay, you
understand.
all those receipts.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
10 years from now, you want an extra $500, you're not gonna still have the receipts.
That's right.
If we remember that we already sent you some, we're not gonna send you any more money. So if you take care of it at the time, well, works great. But we've
That's-
tried to make it as simple as possible. If the club needs money to help somebody,
They get it.
and it doesn't have to be to come here. If you live in Montrose and you need to go to Grand Junction to see an ophthalmologist, is that, that money's available for somebody that has to do that type of
We've
travel.
got people in this western part of Wyoming.
We don't
that
expect
Salt
people
Lake
from the
City.
west side to all be coming here. Now, they might be referred here for a second opinion, or this is where they need their service. And of course, we would want to help them, but it doesn't, we're looking like if you're in Tin Sleep, Wyoming, and you gotta go to Cody or something that way,
Or
well,
Billings.
Or Billings, or Salt Lake City, or.
How many have we had, say, in the last year?
Well, when you get treasurer's report, you can divide by 500 and figure out that it's 1. And it is actually, we had 3 in 2019, 0 in 2020, 1 in 2021. So we have not had very many.
One of the
If they
$5.
don't use the complete
It's-
500.
You
do they
remember the
send out-
chart that talked about what people know about our organization? It just follows in sync. The reason they don't ask for it is because nobody told them it was available. That's your jobs.
And I have had checks returned, actually reimbursement. But that was full reimbursement because the individual decided not to seek care.
Now, as trustees, as we go around and talk about this program, this is something that could be of interest to a club. I mean, if you want to make it part of your presentation. But And you want to know if a club in your district has asked for this. Because you'd like to talk to the club and find out, does this, how did it turn out with that person? Is there a good human interest story that we can use as we go around to other clubs in the district and talk about the impact we're having?
The one case that has happened on my watch could potentially be a very, very good story. I don't know the names or anything, but it was a little girl in Wyoming who had to have her orbital socket
The tissue
rebuilt
taken
because
out,
of
yeah.
congenital, I believe it's
That
congenital.
was my club.
It was. Do you think there's any possibility that the mother of that little girl would be willing to tell her
She
story?
came to our club and the girl gave a presentation.
Well, that would be an excellent thing to put on our website to talk about that program.
And it'd be excellent for us to know
Yes.
as we go around and talk to clubs and say, this is the impact
Yeah.
that your donations made, that we were able to make possible.
Yeah, yeah.
And we can make this happen in your community for
So
someone
did
in
you get
real
those
need.
thank you card, big poster that she made? Yeah, she made a big thank you card to our foundation. I gave it to John.
Poster card.
What a great picture.
Well, it would be great to put a story up on the website, and even if nobody visits the website, if it makes it into a presentation of somebody
Absolutely.
here.
It ought to be making it into our presentations at the annual membership meetings every year.
Yes.
There was a thing that occurred on that is, she was only a fourth grader. So the tissue in the overcoat grows. So the pressure her prosthetic eye was causing was tremendous. She popped it out and she lost it.
Oh, geez.
So they had to go in and like Steve said, go in the orbital cavity and take the tissue out and all that. So single mom, 3 kids. We gave her the 500. They came down. I got all the receipts. They spent the whole 500, probably something out of pocket. And then the eye bank came back and paid 80% of a new prosthetic eye. So the eye bank's doing just more than cataract surgeries.
Oh, they are, because we support their surgery.
So she got a new eye, prosthetic eye out of that. And turquoise green and looked happy, and so that's a good story. But she came to our club and did a presentation, and I think.
Well, Communications Committee. I hope
Well,
you
and
get a
as a
story.
4th grader, and half a year she's going around with nothing over
Oh,
in this eye. And you can imagine what kids are doing.
Yeah.
Now she just got an eye, and she can pop it out and show it. She did, she popped it in.
As a little boy, I can imagine they think it was really cool.
That's a good story.
That's
Should be
the old,
really popular at
joke. I'll
Halloween.
keep my eye out for you.
Yeah, so.
Is it break time?
Close. So am I, let's see, so I'm finished. I mean, you were in process and I
Oh,
got
no,
interrupted.
that's,
Short and sweet.
That's what
Well,
you
we
done.
do, one thing we, on the committee ought to really do is to do a write-up on these on both programs, because we don't have one.
we don't, we have nothing, so.
Yeah.
And that's what I was thinking too. We've got to write up something on the programs and get it out there.
At least bring it to the board.
Yeah.
And we all approve the wording and the intent. And
Yeah.
then we make it part of, eventually, we may even consider to have a policy and procedure book. So these
But
things are going.
these programs are big enough to put on a business card, front and back, both programs. So you can hand out to your club president.
Sure.
I mean, they don't have to be big. We do a great newsletter in Wyoming, 14, 15 pages, and my complaint is, it's too much to read.
Just talking about we serve or?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Oh, well, you
It's
have
a
name
great-
on there.
great, she does a great job, they just say it's just too much.
Name markers.
So
50 pages.
simplify
Yeah, you ought to
things.
see, yeah.
How many
Well,
pages?
too much information. They just-
We
Well,
have just a one pager and you talk to somebody and then they should have been reading that. Nope.
I'm
I
just
don't
saying,
know,
if
I
we can
don't know,
simplify
get
it
people
to a business card,
Just, wait till we have our meeting. Yeah. But I think, yeah,
Because there's so much stuff coming at us all the time,
I know.
especially with that. Good job, Betsy. Thanks for
Mhm.
bringing up some discussion and clarify a lot of different, these two programs especially that we offer. John, you are on board. You have 15 minutes or shorter, and then we have a longer break, or have a 15-minute break and get out of here earlier.
Okay, we've already gone through, and you have a page in your book about committees. You've been listening this morning about, where they're at, and you looked at the Gantt charts, that type of thing. We did make the modification that Ken will join the finance committee and not be on the program committee, and that Wayne is joining the program committee, so it's, hopefully you made that correction on your sheet. I'd also like to point out that in the discussion that we've had is that each of our districts has 2 trustees. Wyoming has 3. And that's because we've got such a large land mass and we're only one district, that's the entire state. So when the board, when we were formed, there were 2 districts in Wyoming. So we actually had an at-large and we had 5 people. And when we downsized to a single district, they allowed us to keep 3 in Wyoming. Bottom line is that that's like a subcommittee all on its own, is that you need to be talking to each other and figure out how you're gonna make visitations and that type of thing. So with that being, what's on the committees, I would encourage that, we're gonna be a little ahead of time at taking break, is that I would suggest that the committees, the executive committee is involved, each of the others. So the executive committee wouldn't be meeting, but the other committees, perhaps that you spend your coffee break figuring out what your agenda is and when you're going to have your next meeting. Because we as a board do not meet again until October, I think it's the 15th. It's on the sheet in here. Is that we talked before about that committee work is where the activity is going to be for this board in the future. And so while you're here and can meet with each other face to face, it seemed to me that's a good time to get out a calendar and start talking about that. We want to work on certain items and look at the Gantt chart and so on that way, and at least set your agenda as to when you're going to meet again. That will also set up the committee chairs, so when we have our board meeting following coffee break, as they can report out what they're going to be doing. And then, as far as closing remarks for this is the end of the orientation. As we come back from coffee, we'll actually be in a board meeting. And so with that is that the program committee, and with Bob's prompting and stuff, is that we worked our way through the business plan, which, of which one of the objects was that to form this orientation. And the committee included Ken, Gary, Betsy, myself, is that we worked on, getting this put together and what we wanted it to look like. It's like all best laid plans, is not all of it worked the way we wanted, but I think it's been helpful. I think it's been useful to everybody. The information shared has been good, especially for those of you that are just joining the board. There was a heavy emphasis on the research part of the Eye Institute. You got to see the building, but we really didn't talk that much about patient services, which has always been our focus because the equipment we bought has been for, patient care. We've almost always just talked about the nose count, how many people have been seen here and stuff. So you've been well exposed to that. There's a lot of other things going on here as well as that. One thing that we're still weak on, is the education component. It's like I've made comments, is that my eye doctor in Cheyenne received some of his training here. He was mentored by Dr. Mendoza. There's probably other docs that have stayed in Colorado or in Wyoming, but the outreach from that. And then Dr. Mendoza did share that I think there's right now there's 6,000. It's estimated they need 6,000 ophthalmologists, and that in the United States as a whole, they're training 450 a year. So that's a part that we need to learn more about too. And so we've had kind of a broad brush exposure, I know that because I've been around here since 1989, is that there's so much in my head that I wish you all knew. But it is an orientation. It's to get your feet wet, hopefully get you off to the start, that for this year, for our board, that for newer people, your learning curve is always straight up. Most people have been on this board after the first year. They're still trying to figure out what they're on here for, but hopefully this orientation has helped you become more focused to start with. Anyhow, I want to thank the committee that put together the orientation. I already have sent an email thank you to Michael for spending the day with us. And I will also send information to Dr. McDonald, thank him for the video, for hosting, buying lunch, and all those kind of things. And then to Dr. Petresh and the staff over there. When we go to the research, they are always just so excited to have us come over so they can show us what they're doing. And even though Dr. Cantos Solar wasn't there this time, instead her staff shares that enthusiasm, and you all saw that. So there's great things going on here, and we're our own worst enemy about letting the rest of the Lions know about it. So anyhow, thank you for coming down yesterday so you could be here. I know a couple of you had to take time off work to do that, and so I appreciate that. And I don't know if there's any other comments we need to share about orientation, but just thank you for being here, and thank you for the organization of it.
Let's take a break.
Thanks.
So, good. Break. What time do you want? We're, 15 minutes